You feel it stirring, deep inside. Not fear, recognition. 2026 approaches, not as storm, as awakening. Chosen one, you were marked before birth. For this hour, the world races. You pause, sense deeper currents, see unseen patterns, always different, never fitting, giving silently, carrying heavy loads, sensitive to energies, words that wound, spaces that drain. Yet your light endures. 5 spiritual warnings come, whispers from above, not to alarm, to equip, to ignite your rise. You've felt isolation, tried belonging, always the outsider. Now you understand. Called, set apart, anointed for purpose. 2026 tests the ready, reveals the true. Your sensitivity, greatest asset. Fatigue signals battle. Dreams carry messages. Relationships mirror truths. Listen, these warnings lead home to power within. Rise prepared. The journey unfolds now. The context sharpens. The battlefield reveals itself. Not swords and shields, frequencies, intentions, unseen currents shaping all. 2026 intensifies this realm. Veils thinning rapidly, collective awakening stirs shadows, and you, first to feel, always have been. Haven't you? That heaviness in certain rooms, conversations leaving you hollow, relationships pulling like quicksand. These are not random. Signatures of engagement, monitoring spirits circling. Drawn to your light, think of them as scouts, not conquerors, probing for entry through familiar doors. Trauma bonds those sticky cords, formed in childhood, reinforced in adulthood. They anchor you to old energies. You give endlessly. They take invisibly until exhaustion warns. Jezebel's spirit whispers through them. Control disguised as care. Stay small. Stay safe. Give more. You've been scapegoat often. Blamed for family fractures. Held the chaos others created. Silent strength your badge. Flying monkeys in force. Echoing the core narrative. Defending dysfunction. Isolating the light bearer. 2026 digitalizes this war. Algorithms as monitors. Feeds curating division. Notifications tugging cords. Your energy premium fuel. They harvest remotely now. Scroll becomes siphon. Warning 1. Audit connections. Who drains? Who ignites? Curate ruthlessly. Compassion with boundaries, not walls. Filters. Your anointing repels naturally. When activated, that inner oil flows, sealing breaches. Daily declaration. I am light, sealed, sovereign. Spirits scatter. Feel ancestral layers too. Bloodline battles unresolved. Pass to the sensitive one. You. 2026 planetary alignments trigger. Old contracts surface. Demand release. Honor. Forgive. Cut cords lovingly. Visualization works. Light sword through ties. Not anger. Clarity. Physical signs confirm. Tension release. Sudden clarity. Lighter step. Societal patterns mirror personal. Global chaos projects, leaders manipulate, masses follow. You see through, always have. Starseed vision piercing veils. Warning, don't isolate in truth. Share wisely. Find tribe. Light recognizes light. Technology tempts disconnection, yet connects realms. Use discernment. Tool, not master. Dreams intensify now. Portals opening. Warnings coded symbolically. Animals messenger. Numbers repeating. All guiding. Trust calibrated intuition. Peace confirms. Fear pause. Inner fatigue signals overload. Not weakness. System protecting. Rest strategically. Nature immersion. Silence cultivation. 2026 demands resilience. Not hardness. Fluid strength. Light warrior stance. Relationships test fiercest. Soul contracts complete. Karmic partners exit. Space opens. Grieve cleanly. No chasing ghosts. New alignments await. Monitor self-talk too. Internal flying monkeys chatter. Old scripts replaying. Silence them. Replace truth. I am chosen. Equipped. Rising. Patterns repeat until seen. 2026 forces vision. Collective shadow projects. Personal responsibility calls. You've carried enough. For others, now self first. Sustainable service. Battlefield favors prepared. Inner work precedes outer. Anointing flows freely then. Energies shift palpably. You sense coming waves. Position now. Protection ritual simple. Salt circles. Sage smoke. Prayer seals. Body armor. Hydration. Clean fuel. Movement flows. Mental clarity. Media fasts. Truth sources only. Emotional grounding. Gratitude logs. Joy anchors light. 2026 convergence point. Spiritual digital physical merge. Chosen ones bridge worlds. Your sensitivity superpower. When stewarded, warning embedded. Steward well. Overflow serves multitudes. Depletion serves none. Rise from recognition. Battlefield becomes classroom. Every encounter teaches. Discernment sharpens daily. Trust builds through testing. Light prevails inevitably. These forces circle tighter now. As your power awakens, the pressure shifts. Not louder, smarter. Because when you stop leaking energy, the system that fed on you has to adapt. And this is where 2026 gets subtle. Not dramatic, not obvious, but precise. You may notice it first as confusion. A fog that wasn't there yesterday. A simple decision suddenly heavy. A clear boundary suddenly cruel. That's not your spirit failing. That's your nervous system being negotiated with. Old dynamics return with new costumes. A message that sounds kind but leaves you shaken. An invitation that looks harmless but pulls you back into the same role. Chosen one. The battlefield in 2026 will often wear a smile. Warning 2 arrives here. It's the warning about false urgency. Not all urgency is guidance. Some urgency is manipulation. Some urgency is a hook. Some urgency is a trauma bond trying to reattach. You'll feel it as, I must fix this now. I must respond now. I must explain myself. I must prove I'm good. That's the old spell. The scapegoat spell. The one that trained you to believe peace is earned through self-erasure. But hear this slowly. Peace is not a reward. Peace is a right. If something demands your energy immediately without honoring your clarity, pause. If someone needs access to you right now or they collapse, pause. If a relationship only works when you are smaller, pause. This is how you win without fighting. You don't argue with fog. You step back into light. In 2026, boundaries become a language, not a weapon. A language. Short sentences. Clean endings. No emotional dissertations. No defending your no. Because explaining too much can become the doorway. That's how a Jezebel spirit often operates, not as a horror story, as a pattern. Control through conversation. Control through guilt. Control through endless processing that never resolves. You don't need to demonize anyone. You just need to recognize the loop. And those flying monkeys? Sometimes they're not even people. Sometimes they're thoughts. Sometimes they're the inner voices that rush to protect dysfunction because dysfunction feels familiar. Here's the new practice for 2026. When urgency hits, ask one question. Does this pull me out of my center? If yes, it is not guidance. Guidance may be firm, but it will not steal your breath. It will not punish your pause. It will not demand you abandon yourself to be loved. And if you're wondering, how do I know the difference? Your body knows. Your body has always known. Manipulation tightens. Guidance steadies. Manipulation speeds you up. Guidance brings you home. So slow down. Even if the world is sprinting, this is how your anointing stays clean. Not perfect, clean. You protect it by staying honest. Honest about what drains you. Honest about what you can give. Honest about what you are no longer available for. Because 2026 will try to buy your light with approval, to rent your peace with attention, to distract you with endless almost. But you are not here for almost. You are here for alignment, for truth that lasts, for love that doesn't require you to bleed to be believed. And as you begin living this way, expect a reaction, not always outward. Sometimes it's quiet, a subtle distancing, a sudden coldness, a strange silence from people who used to call you needed. That silence is information. It may sting, but it's also confirmation that your energy is no longer publicly accessible. Chosen one. This is not loss. This is filtration. And the moment you accept that, another door opens, one that doesn't ask you to shrink, to enter, because that door was built for the real you. Not the version that performs peace, not the version that over-explains, not the version that stays available to avoid being misunderstood. The real you. And this is where the battlefield gets honest. Because when you stop negotiating your boundaries, some people don't argue. They simply disappear. That is a sign. Not that you failed, that you graduated. In 2026, The warning is not only about what comes at you, but what leaves you when you finally stand still. You'll notice it in the small moments. You don't reply immediately, and the love turns sharp. You don't rescue, and the friendship turns cold. You don't take the blame, and suddenly you're difficult. Chosen one, this is the cost of stepping out of the scapegoat role. The old system relied on one thing: your reflex to restore harmony at your expense. So when you stop, it reveals who benefited. This is not a call to suspicion. It's a call to discernment. There is a difference. Discernment doesn't harden you. It clarifies you. Now listen closely. Sometimes the most dangerous urgency is the one that feels spiritual. The message that says, if you don't act now, you'll miss your destiny. The pressure that says, if you don't forgive immediately, you're not evolved. The voice that says, if you don't open your heart to everyone, you're not loving. That's not heaven. That's a shortcut. And shortcuts are where patterns hide. In 2026, your pace becomes protection. Your slowness becomes sovereignty. You will learn to do this, to hold a decision without rushing to resolve the discomfort, to let silence sit in the room until truth shows itself, to allow someone's reaction to reveal their intention, because intention is always there. It just needs time to step forward. This is why you felt tired for so long, not because you're weak, because you've been living at other people's pace, other people's emergencies, other people's storms, other people's timelines. But the chosen aren't called to hurry. They're called to align. Now, a deeper layer. There are people who don't want your time. They want your attention. Because attention is energy, and energy is influence. In 2026, this becomes a main arena, not just in relationships, in media, in community spaces, even in spiritual circles. Some will flatter you, some will provoke you, some will bait you into defending yourself. Different hooks, same goal, to pull your light outward until you forget what it feels like to be home inside yourself. So here's the practice. Simple, sacred. When something pulls at you, before you answer, return to your center. One breath, one pause, one moment of inner truth. And ask, is this mine to carry? If it's not, release it. No drama, no speech, no explanation. Release is a spiritual skill, and 2026 will reward it. Because the more you release what isn't yours, the more space you create for what is. Your real mission, your real tribe, your real love. And that's when your anointing becomes visible, not as performance, as presence. A calm that cannot be pressured. A yes that cannot be bought. A no that cannot be punished. This is how you rise. Not by winning every battle, by refusing to enter wars that were designed to drain you. And as you live this, you'll feel the next shift approaching, the one that separates discernment from isolation, the one that teaches you how to be protected without becoming closed. Because protection is not the same as hiding. And this is where many chosen ones stumble, especially in 2026. You learn discernment, and then you start disappearing. You cut everyone off. You go silent. You call it peace. But deep down, it's a wound wearing holy language. Warning 3 begins to form. Not the warning about the enemy, the warning about the reflex to isolate. Isolation can feel safe because no one can drain you there. No one can misunderstand you there. No one can pull you into old roles there. But isolation also freezes growth. It keeps the heart locked in survival wisdom. It can turn discernment into suspicion. And that's the trap. Because the goal is not for you to become unreachable. The goal is for you to become unshakable. There is a difference. Unreachable means love can't reach you either. Support can't reach you either. Your people can't find you. Unshakable means you can be present without being porous. You can love without leaking. In 2026, many chosen ones will feel tempted to call avoidance boundaries, to call numbness spiritual maturity, to call ghosting self-respect. But the heart knows. The heart always knows when it is closing out of fear instead of choosing out of wisdom. So here is the practice. Simple, but brave. Don't ask who deserves me. Ask who is aligned with my nervous system. Aligned people do not rush you. Aligned people do not punish your pause. Aligned people do not demand access as proof of love. Aligned people feel like exhale. And yes, they are rare. That's why you thought you were meant to walk alone. But walking alone for a season is not the same as being called to loneliness. Your mission is not solitary forever. You are being prepared for clean connection. This is why the previous warning mattered. False urgency exposes extractors. But now, you must stay open enough to recognize supporters. Because some people won't drain you. They will strengthen you. They will reflect you back to yourself without needing to own you. 2026 is a year of sorting, not just removing, selecting. And selection requires courage. Because when you begin to choose well, you will feel unfamiliar discomfort. Your system is used to chaos, used to intensity, used to proving. Clean love may feel boring at first, not because it lacks depth, because it lacks danger. Your trauma bond patterns may mistake peace for emptiness. So if someone treats you gently, and your first instinct is to run, pause. That is not discernment. That is conditioning. And if someone treats you intensely, and your first instinct is to surrender, pause. That may not be destiny. That may be the old hook dressed as chemistry, chosen one. This is the real battle in 2026. Not darkness outside you, but the unhealed parts inside you that confuse familiar pain for spiritual confirmation. This is where the scapegoat heals, not by proving innocence, by refusing the role entirely. This is where the heart reopens, with locks, with gates, with wisdom. Not everyone gets a key, but someone will. The right ones, the aligned ones. And when you find them, you won't feel pushed. You'll feel held. Now, as this sorting happens, another pressure rises. Because when you stop isolating and start selecting, the battlefield changes again. And the next warning emerges like a low drum in the distance. The low drum is real, not as fear, as signal. Because 2026 doesn't only test what you can resist. It tests what you will agree to. Some battles don't come as attacks. They come as invitations, opportunities, stages, platforms, fast lanes. And here is the warning beneath the warning. Not every open door is yours. Chosen one. When your light gets brighter, more doors appear. More people call. More missions land in your lap. More responsibility is offered with flattering words. This is how many of the sensitive ones fall. Not into sin, into overload. They call it purpose, but it is pressure. They call it service, but it is self-abandonment. They call it God needs me, but deep down, it is the old pattern. If I don't carry it, it will collapse. That pattern is not holy. It is a trauma bond with responsibility. And 2026 amplifies it, because the world will be hungry for leadership, for certainty, for comfort, for someone to hold the emotional weight that others refuse to process. That someone has been you. So listen slowly. Let this land softly. You are called to serve, but not to be consumed. You are anointed, but not to be exploited. Your sensitivity is sacred, but it is not public property. This is where discernment becomes a blade, not to cut people, to cut cords, to cut assignments that were never yours. Because there will be voices in 2026 that sound spiritual but are fueled by control. They will speak in should. They will speak in guilt. They will speak in urgency. And sometimes they will speak through your own ambition. That's the part few admit. Chosen ones can crave recognition too. After years of invisibility, after being scapegoat, after being misunderstood, a stage can feel like salvation. But a stage does not heal an unhealed heart. It only amplifies it. So if an opportunity appears and your inner world tightens, pause. If the door opens and you feel your peace leaving, pause. If the assignment comes and you immediately feel guilty for wanting rest, pause. Rest is not rebellion. It is calibration. And this is where the next layer deepens. Because some of you have been monitored so long that you confuse visibility with danger. So you hide, or you overperform, or you swing between both. That swing is exhausting. And in 2026, exhaustion will be used to make you easier to influence. Not by demons in the dark, by people, by systems, by environments that reward burnout. So here is the counterspell. Move at the pace of truth. Truth has a pace. It doesn't rush. It doesn't beg. It doesn't threaten. Truth is steady. Like gravity, if something is yours, it will remain yours even after you breathe, even after you sleep, even after you pray, even after you ask for confirmation. What is truly aligned does not punish discernment. And now, this is where the battlefield turns from external to deeply personal again. Because the deepest temptation for the chosen is not darkness. It is distortion. To think, my value is what I carry. My love is what I endure. My calling is what I sacrifice. No, your calling is who you become. Whole, clear, rooted. Then you serve from overflow. Then you speak without strain. Then you love without bargaining. This is how you rise without burning out. And as you begin to live this way, as you stop chasing doors, as you stop saying yes out of guilt, as you stop confusing pressure with purpose, something quiet begins to happen. The noise around you starts to fade, and underneath it, you start to hear the next layer of your own spirit, waiting to be decoded. The next layer is quieter, not dramatic, not loud, but undeniable. Because when the noise fades, what remains is you. And in that silence, a new warning arrives. Not about other people, not about systems, about identity. 2026 will tempt you to forget who you are the moment you start to become powerful. Not powerful like dominance, powerful like clarity, powerful like peace, powerful like no. There is a part of you that has survived by shape-shifting, reading rooms, adjusting tone, softening truth, making yourself digestible. That part learned early. Belonging is earned. But chosen one, belonging is not earned. It is recognized. This is the inner battlefield. The moment you stop being what is expected, you will feel the withdrawal. Not always from people, from your own habits. You may feel naked, like you're missing armor, because the armor was performance, and performance kept you safe, until it didn't. So here is the warning. Do not confuse authenticity with danger. When you tell the truth, your body might shake, your heart might race, not because you're wrong, because you're new. New to being seen, new to not managing reactions, new to letting people misunderstand you without rushing to fix it. In 2026, this will be one of the great separations. The separation between those who can hold your truth and those who only loved your compliance. You'll see it in the small tests. You speak one honest sentence, and a whole atmosphere shifts. You stop laughing at what hurts you, and someone calls you too serious. You stop rescuing, and someone calls you selfish. That's the old world responding to the new you. Stay steady, because the real warning is not their reaction. It's your reflex to retreat, your reflex to soften, to apologize for your clarity, to shrink back into the old shape so the room can relax. But you weren't born to manage rooms. You were born to carry light. And light makes some people uncomfortable. Not because you are wrong, because they have lived in dimness too long. This is where your anointing matures. Not in public moments, in private ones. When you are alone, and you choose truth anyway, when no one claps and you stay aligned anyway. When your nervous system begs you to return to the familiar, and you whisper, not this year. 2026 will try to label you, to box you, to make your calling into an aesthetic, to make your depth into a brand. Be careful. A brand is not a soul. A label is not an identity. You are not here to perform chosen. You are here to become whole. And the moment you stop performing, you start hearing guidance more clearly. It won't come as panic. It won't come as pressure. It will come as a steady knowing that doesn't need anyone's agreement. That is the voice you follow. This is where the inner world opens, not as chaos, as compass. And as that compass awakens, you'll start to notice something else. The patterns you used to call bad luck start revealing their true shape, and the next stage of your journey begins to rise from within. And now it becomes personal. Not in a dramatic way, in a precise way. Because once identity stabilizes, the nervous system starts telling the truth. You begin to notice patterns, not as punishment, as information. The same kind of person, the same kind of conversation, the same kind of almost, the same kind of disappointment arriving in a different outfit. And you ask yourself, why does this keep happening? Chosen one. This is where the inner world stops being a storm and becomes a map. The map reveals a hidden vow, a silent agreement you made long ago. Maybe it sounded like, if I'm useful, I'll be loved. If I carry more, I'll be safe. If I stay quiet, I won't be abandoned. If I give first, I won't be rejected. These vows are not evil. They were survival. But in 2026, survival strategies become spiritual ceilings. And the warning is gentle but firm. Do not build your future with the tools that were designed for your past. You may feel this warning as discomfort when you try to overgive again, as a tight chest when you try to people please again, as sudden exhaustion when you ignore your own needs again. This is not your body betraying you. This is your body protecting you. Your sensitivity is evolving. It is no longer willing to be used as a weapon against you. This is why many chosen ones in 2026 will feel symptoms that make no sense until they stop and listen. Not a diagnosis, not a prophecy of doom, a signal, a boundary, a request for alignment. If you've been trying to heal only by understanding, 2026 will push you into embodiment. Because insight without action becomes a loop, and loops are where the old patterns live. This is where you begin practicing micro-choices, small, clean decisions that rewire destiny. You don't respond immediately. You wait. You don't explain yourself. You state the truth once. You don't chase clarity from people who profit from confusion. You step back. You don't rehearse conversations in your head. You come back to your breath. Each micro-choice says, I am not owned. And this is how the trauma bond loosens. Not with one grand break, but with 100 small refusals to abandon yourself. This is also where forgiveness changes shape. In the past, you forgave too early, to keep peace, to stay connected, to avoid conflict. But in 2026, forgiveness becomes clean. It becomes, I release you and I remove access. That is not hatred. That is wisdom. And some of you need to hear this, because your heart is so open, you think closing a door means you failed at love. No, closing the door to harm is devotion to your calling. Your anointing cannot remain clear in rooms that demand your self-betrayal. So when the old system tries again, when the scapegoat role is offered again, when the flying monkeys return again, when the Jezebel pattern circles again, you will feel something new. Not confusion, not panic, a calm, no. A grounded stillness that does not need to be explained. And that calm is proof. Proof that you are no longer fighting to be chosen. You are living as the chosen. And as that truth settles, the next layer opens naturally. The layer where the experiences you've had, the strange timing, the vivid dreams, the energetic drains, the sudden reversals begin to make sense as part of a larger spiritual language. And that language has been speaking to you for years. Just not in words, in patterns, in timing, in the way your body reacts before your mind can explain. This is where the unseen becomes practical. not mystical theater. A code you can learn to read. You've had moments that felt like a warning bell. A sudden heaviness when you enter a place. A strange resistance when you agree too quickly. A dream that repeats until you finally listen, and you used to dismiss it. Because you were trained to trust logic more than your own knowing. But 2026 doesn't allow that split anymore. It invites integration. Here's what many chosen ones discover. Not every attack is an attack. Sometimes it's exposure, a hidden dynamic becoming visible, a mask slipping, a pattern revealing its true name. That is protection. If you've ever felt like every time I start moving forward, something happens, pause, look closer. Sometimes what happens is not a wall, it's a filter. It removes what can't come with you. It interrupts what would have drained you later. It delays what would have trapped you deeper. This is why discernment matters more than drama. Now, the first set of experiences to decode in 2026 is energetic interference. Not paranoia, not conspiracy, just the simple truth. Your nervous system is sensitive, your spirit is perceptive, and when you walk into misalignment, your body speaks. Energetic interference feels like racing thoughts that weren't there moments ago. Tightness in the solar plexus, sudden irritability after a call, sleep that doesn't restore. Again, not to scare you, to help you name it. Because what you can name, you can work with. And the first tool is not warfare, it's hygiene. Energy hygiene. You shower your body. Now you learn to clear your field. Not with obsession, with simplicity. After heavy interactions, return to yourself. Hydrate. Wash your hands slowly. Step outside. Breathe into your belly. Let your system discharge. Small rituals reset the signal. And 2026 is a year of signal. The second experience to decode is the sudden turning in relationships. You'll see it more clearly now. Some people only feel safe when you are uncertain, when you are tired, when you are still proving. The moment you stabilize, they destabilize. That doesn't mean they're evil. It means the dynamic was built around your self-sacrifice. And when you remove self-sacrifice, the structure shakes. This is where the language of the unseen shows up as behavior, as reactions, as withdrawal, as subtle punishment. When that happens, don't chase. Don't beg clarity. Observe. Let truth reveal itself over time. The third experience is dreams. In 2026, dreams may feel sharper. Not because you're losing your mind, because your subconscious is clearing, because your spirit is processing. But here's the key. Dreams are symbolic. They are not verdicts. A dream of being chased does not mean doom. It may mean you are running from a truth. A dream of losing something may mean you're releasing attachment. A dream of conflict may mean you're integrating power. Decode with compassion, not fear. And now, a crucial warning inside this decoding. Do not spiritualize everything. Some fatigue is spiritual. Some fatigue is physical. Some fatigue is emotional. Sometimes you need prayer. Sometimes you need sleep. Sometimes you need a conversation with a qualified professional. Wisdom uses every support available. Now feel what's happening. Your world becomes quieter. Not because problems vanish, because you're learning the language. You're reading signals early. You're choosing cleaner paths sooner. And that is when the next wave arrives. The one that will ask you to notice your personal patterns, not just the phenomena. Because the unseen doesn't only show up around you, it shows up through you. And before that next wave opens fully, one last marker completes this layer. Because phenomena are not just out there. They show you where your field is open, where you are porous, where you are overextended. So notice the final sign in 2026, the one people rarely talk about. The moment you start feeling guilty for protecting your peace, that guilt is not guidance, it's residue. Leftover wiring from years of being trained to confuse access with love. When you begin saying no, your system may panic. Because the old world taught you, no equals abandonment, no equals danger, no equals punishment. But you're not living in that world anymore. In this new season, no becomes a prayer. A boundary becomes a blessing. A pause becomes protection. And you will see the evidence, not as fireworks, as quiet stability. You'll walk into a space and feel the pressure. And instead of absorbing it, you'll step back. You'll receive a message that carries urgency. And instead of reacting, you'll breathe first. You'll feel that familiar hook, the pull of a trauma bond, and instead of explaining, you'll release. This is the moment your field seals. Not perfectly, but consistently. Consistency is spiritual authority. Now, there is a difference between being sensitive and being available. Sensitivity is your gift. Availability is your choice. In 2026, the warning is simple. Stop treating your gift like it must be donated to every environment that demands it. You can love people without letting them enter your inner temple. You can serve without surrendering your nervous system. You can forgive without reopening access. This is maturity, not coldness. And if someone calls your boundary selfish, let that word fall to the floor. Do not pick it up. Because many people only call you selfish when you stop being useful. That doesn't mean you hate them. It means you're free. Now take this with you as a practical seal for 2026. When you feel interference, don't panic. Don't dramatize. Don't spiral. Return to basics. Eat, hydrate, sleep, breathe. Step into nature. Reduce stimulation. Speak one honest sentence to yourself. I am safe in my body. Then ask one question. What is this trying to teach me? Sometimes the answer is, leave that room. End that call. Stop that conversation. Sometimes the answer is, rest. You're overloaded. Sometimes the answer is, this is an old wound asking to be healed. And when you respond this way, the phenomena loses its power because you're no longer confused. You're no longer fighting shadows. You're learning the language, and now the next wave can open. Because once you recognize the signs around you, you're ready to recognize the pattern within you, the personal blueprint, the repeated pathway, the hidden script that has shaped your life. And when that script becomes visible, everything changes. Because once the script becomes visible, you stop living on autopilot. You stop calling it fate. You stop calling it bad luck. You stop calling it, that's just how life is for me. You see the pathway. And when you see it, you can step off it. That's the doorway into the next layer. Not a new phenomenon outside you, a pattern inside you. A personal rhythm you've repeated because it once kept you safe. And this is where 2026 becomes mercy, because the year will highlight your pattern again and again until you finally recognize it without shame. So let's name it gently. Many chosen ones carry a core script. I must earn safety through usefulness. It shows up as overgiving, overthinking, over-explaining, over-functioning. You don't just help. You carry. You don't just listen. You absorb. You don't just love. You merge. And then you call the pain spiritual warfare, when sometimes it's simply a nervous system that never learned it could rest without being punished. That's not a flaw. It's history. And in 2026, history asks to be healed. Here's how you'll know this pattern is active. Your body feels calm only when something is wrong. Only when you're needed. Only when you're fixing. Peace feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels unsafe. Silence feels like abandonment. So you fill the space with work, with scrolling, with overcontact, with trying to figure it out. But the unseen language you've been decoding, it leads here, because the moment you choose stillness, the old pattern will protest. It will send thoughts that sound like truth. It's lazy. It's selfish. You're falling behind. You're wasting time. Those thoughts are not prophecy. They are withdrawal symptoms from a lifetime of proving. Breathe. This is where your anointing becomes internal. Not something you use to survive other people. Something that heals you. In 2026, the warning for chosen ones is, don't use spiritual language to bypass your human needs. Some of your power will come from prayer, and some of your power will come from structure, routine, support, healthy relationships, clear limits. And when you begin building that, you'll notice the phenomena change. Less interference, less fog, fewer mysterious drains, because you're not as open, not as porous, not as available for extraction. Now, hold this next truth carefully. Not everything that drains you is a spirit. Sometimes it's a person who never learned to self-regulate. Sometimes it's a room built on constant crisis. Sometimes it's a role you keep accepting because it makes you feel valuable. The unseen will still speak, but it will speak through reality, through consequences, through repeated outcomes, through your own exhaustion. And in 2026, exhaustion is a message. Stop building your life around what hurts, not by force, by choice. So, if you want a final seal on this layer, a closing key, let it be this. You don't need to fight every pattern. You only need to stop feeding it. Stop feeding it with instant replies. Stop feeding it with guilt. Stop feeding it with self-abandonment. Stop feeding it with access. And when you stop feeding it, the pattern starves. The confusion clears. The signal returns. Now you're ready. Ready to step into the next decoding, not just what you experience, but what you consistently repeat. The personal blueprint, the inner wiring, the hidden agreements you can now rewrite. And as that blueprint reveals itself, the next wave begins to rise. You'll recognize the blueprint the moment it appears. because it doesn't feel like a new idea. It feels like a familiar corridor you've walked 1,000 times. Same doorway, different year, same outcome. And the moment you see it, the power shifts. Because patterns survive in the dark, they weaken in the light. This next layer is not about phenomena. It's about you, your personal rhythm, your repeated sequence. It usually begins with hope, a fresh start, a clean intention. Then a test arrives. Someone pushes, a situation tightens, a demand appears. And without noticing, you return to an old role. The one who fixes, the one who explains, the one who carries, the one who forgives too fast, the one who stays longer than is healthy. This is the pattern of the chosen who grew up learning that love was conditional. So the blueprint reads like this: if I stay useful, I stay safe. And 2026 brings a warning inside that blueprint. Warning 4 is not only protect your energy, it is stop confusing your worth with your output. Because the world will reward your output, applaud it, use it, build on it. Then ask for more. And if your identity is tied to being needed, you will say yes until your spirit goes quiet. Not because you're weak, because you're loyal. But loyalty without wisdom becomes self-betrayal. So the blueprint must be rewritten, not by a dramatic reinvention, by a new sequence. The old sequence was pressure, then proving, then depletion, then isolation, then recovery, then repeating. The new sequence in 2026 is pressure, then pause, then truth, then boundary, then peace, then aligned action. That is the rewrite. Simple, not easy, but simple. Now listen, this is where many chosen ones get afraid. Because when you stop proving, you risk being unseen again. And you remember what that felt like: being overlooked, misread, taken for granted. So part of you says, keep performing. At least they'll notice. But 2026 is not asking you to be noticed. It's asking you to be rooted. Because rooted people don't chase recognition. Recognition finds them naturally when their field is clean. This is where service becomes refined. Service is not saying yes to everything. Service is bringing your whole self to what is truly assigned. And yes, there are assignments. But they come with peace, not panic, not guilt, not pressure. If you have to violate yourself to serve, it is not divine alignment. Now another part of the blueprint appears: the pattern of over-responsibility. You sense a room's tension and you instinctively try to heal it. You feel someone's sadness and you instinctively absorb it. You notice conflict and you instinctively become the bridge. That's beautiful. It's also exhausting. So here's the warning hidden in kindness. Your empathy is sacred, but it must become skilled. Skill means boundaries. Skill means timing. Skill means choosing where to pour. Otherwise, empathy becomes a trauma bond to other people's pain. And that bond will keep you trapped in roles that look noble but quietly erase you. 2026 will test this pattern through opportunities to overgive. A project, a relationship, a family crisis, a spiritual group, a person who says, "Only you understand me." Be careful with that sentence. Sometimes it is true. Sometimes it is a hook. Sometimes it is a way for someone to outsource their healing onto your nervous system. And if you were raised as the scapegoat, you're primed for it. Because scapegoats are trained to take responsibility for what they didn't create. So when the pressure comes and the old impulse rises, practice the new sequence. Pause. Name what's happening. Choose truth. Set the boundary. Return to peace. This is not cold. This is mature love. And as you practice this, you'll notice something almost miraculous. Your energy starts returning. Not in a rush, in a steady restoration. Your sleep deepens. Your thoughts slow. Your intuition clears. Because a clear field is a readable field. And that is why 2026 brings this warning. So you can read your life again. So you can interpret signals accurately. So you can stop calling exhaustion destiny. Now, there is one more layer to the blueprint. The pattern of control. Not controlling others. Controlling yourself. The way you tighten. The way you grip. The way you rehearse. The way you plan 12 steps ahead so you won't be hurt again. That's understandable. It's also heavy. And this is where the Jezebel pattern can even show up inside you as self-control that becomes self-oppression. A voice that says, be perfect, be spiritual, be unbothered, never need anything. But chosen one, needing rest is not failure. Needing support is not weakness. Needing time is not lack of faith. Faith is not forcing. Faith is aligning. So the blueprint rewrite continues. From control to trust. From proving to presence. From overgiving to overflow. This is how you rise in 2026. Not by doing more, by being truer. And now, as this personal pattern becomes unmistakable, you are ready for the next layer of decoding. The collective patterns, the social currents, the wider mirror. Because what's happening inside you is also happening in the world. And when you see both at once, something locks into place. Because the world is not random either. It has a rhythm, a script, a repeated sequence. And in 2026, the collective script becomes louder. Not to crush you, to show you what you're standing inside of. So here is the final thread that completes this layer, the part that helps you keep your sanity without turning cold. The collective pattern will try to make you hurry. Hurry to choose sides. Hurry to react. Hurry to post. Hurry to judge. Hurry to fear. But your spirit wasn't built for that pace. Chosen ones are not designed to live on the surface. You are designed to sense the root, to hear the hidden motive, to notice what isn't being said. So when the world speeds up, you slow down. And that is not weakness. That is leadership. Because collective noise is a frequency. It pulls your field outward. It tries to make your attention public property. It tries to turn your nervous system into a marketplace. This is why the personal blueprint mattered. Because if you still believe your worth is your output, the collective will use you. If you still believe love equals access, the collective will drain you. If you still believe rest is laziness, the collective will burn you out and call it impact. So the seal for 2026 is simple. Refuse the collective pace. You can care without consuming everything. You can be informed without being flooded. You can serve without becoming a sponge for the entire world's unresolved pain. And if you're sensitive, you must treat your attention like sacred currency. Because attention is not neutral. Whatever you stare at, you feed. This doesn't mean you ignore suffering. It means you choose your lane, your assignment, your bandwidth. This is what mature anointing looks like. Not a person who feels everything and collapses, a person who feels deeply and stays rooted. And yes, in 2026, you may notice that collective dynamics mirror some of the same patterns you've lived personally. The scapegoat pattern scales up. Groups will choose a target, blame concentrates, nuance dies. Flying monkeys multiply. Not because people are evil, because many are dysregulated, afraid, searching for certainty in a complex world, so they outsource their anxiety into outrage. And if you are a chosen one, you will feel the pressure to join the swarm or become the target. This is where discernment becomes holy again. You do not have to become loud to be effective. You do not have to become harsh to be strong. You do not have to become cynical to be safe. Your power is in clarity. Your protection is in pace. Your mission is in steadiness. So, when collective hysteria rises, do one thing first. Return to your body. Breathe. Feel your feet. Ask yourself, is my soul expanded or contracted? If you feel contracted, step back. That is not cowardice. That is wisdom. Because in 2026, the real war is not about opinions. It's about regulation. Who can stay regulated in a dysregulated world? That person becomes a lighthouse. Not by preaching, by existing. And as you practice this, as you protect your attention, as you refuse the collective rush, the next layer opens naturally. Because once you see the personal pattern and the collective pattern, you start asking the deeper question. What does this mean spiritually? Not as superstition, as purpose, as maturation, as a real invitation into growth. And that's where the next revelation waits. Quietly, patiently, ready for you to meet it without fear, without you having to announce it. Because real rising is quiet. It changes your life first. Then the world notices later. So let this final thread seal the reframing. Action in 2026 is not do more. Action is do what is aligned consistently. And aligned action has a certain feel. It doesn't whip you. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't demand you bleed to prove you're devoted. Aligned action is clean, repeatable, sustainable. Now, here is the last temptation to name gently, because it hides inside growth. The temptation is spiritual perfection. The voice that says, if you're truly chosen, you'll never be triggered. If you're truly awake, you'll never feel tired. If you're truly anointed, you'll always know what to do. But that is not spirituality. That is pressure wearing holy language. In 2026, you are allowed to be human. You are allowed to have days where your nervous system needs softness. You are allowed to have moments where you don't know, where you pause, where you ask for help. Your power is not the absence of struggle. Your power is the return to center. Again and again and again. That return is your mastery. So here is the reframe you carry forward. You don't rise once. You rise daily. You rise when you choose rest instead of proving. You rise when you choose truth instead of performing. You rise when you choose boundaries instead of bargaining. You rise when you choose consistency instead of intensity. And yes, some people will not like this version of you. They preferred the version that explained, the version that rescued, the version that stayed reachable at all times. But your calling doesn't require everyone to approve. It requires you to remain clean. Now feel the shift. The plan begins to form, not as a checklist, as a way of living, a morning rhythm that steadies you, a nightly rhythm that releases you, a rule for your phone, a rule for your calendar, a rule for your relationships. Simple standards, sacred lines, a life built to hold your light. And this is where the warning becomes a gift. You stop preparing forever, and you start building. Not the fantasy life, the real one, the life where your body can breathe, where your mind can rest, where your heart can love without leaking, where your spirit can speak without strain. This is how the chosen become dangerous to darkness, not by fighting everything, by becoming stable, by becoming consistent, by becoming the kind of person who doesn't abandon themselves anymore. And as you step into that stability, everything begins to converge. Your sensitivity becomes guidance. Your boundaries become protection. Your rest becomes strategy. Your clarity becomes leadership. And the path ahead becomes visible. Not all at once, one step at a time. The next right step, and as you take it, another step appears. And as you keep taking them, you'll realize something quietly stunning. You were never behind. You were being prepared. And now, the preparation turns into movement. The movement turns into a plan, and the plan turns into a life that holds your rise without burning you out. The shift is subtle now, because what comes next isn't about decoding. It's about convergence, about gathering everything you've learned into one clean direction. You've named the drains. You've seen the patterns. You've reclaimed your pace. You've stopped worshiping urgency. You've stopped romanticizing pain. Now the question becomes, what does your life look like when you live like you believe yourself? This is where the warnings stop sounding like warnings and start sounding like standards. In 2026, one of the greatest traps for the sensitive is confusion disguised as spirituality. A constant scanning, a constant interpreting, a constant, what does this mean? But meaning without movement becomes another loop. So the invitation now is integration, not in your head, in your days. You don't rise by thinking harder. You rise by living cleaner. And clean living begins with one thing, a decision about access. Who has access to your time? Who has access to your body? Who has access to your attention? Who has access to your emotions? Who has access to your future? Because your attention is the doorway. And in 2026, doorways matter. Some people will knock with sweetness, some with crisis, some with flattering urgency, some with spiritual language. Not every knock deserves an opening. This is not paranoia. This is stewardship. And stewardship is the holy upgrade. So you build a simple framework, not rules to imprison you, a structure to protect your light. You decide what your mornings are for, not the world's noise, not other people's emergencies, your signal. You decide what your evenings are for, not doom scrolling, not reliving conversations, release, recovery. You decide what your phone is for, a tool, not a leash. You decide what your relationships are for, mutual growth, not mutual depletion. You decide what your work is for, contribution, not self-erasure. And when you live this way, something unexpected happens. Your sensitivity stops feeling like a curse. It becomes an instrument. Because now it has a container. Without a container, sensitivity is chaos. With a container, sensitivity is discernment. This is where your rise becomes visible without you trying. Not loud, just different. People will feel it. The calm, the clarity, the absence of desperation. And yes, some will try to test it. They will push the old buttons. They will send the old hooks. They will bring the old guilt. They will offer the old roles. But you won't argue. You won't explain. You won't over-spiritualize. You will simply choose differently. This is what it means to exit the scapegoat identity. Scapegoats argue for their innocence. Healed ones don't apply for belonging. They select. Now, a gentle reminder for YouTube's safe truth. Not everything that hurts is spiritual. Not everything that drains is demonic. Some patterns are psychological. Some are relational. Some are nervous system conditioning. Some require rest. Some require support. Wisdom uses every tool available. And that matters because platforms amplify language. If you talk like everything is an attack, you can accidentally feed fear. And fear is not your message. Your message is clarity, peace, agency. You are not here to make people paranoid. You are here to help them come home. You can name monitoring spirits as a metaphor for feeling watched, for being hypervigilant, for living with unresolved trauma. You can name Jezebel's spirit as a metaphor for controlling dynamics, coercive patterns, manipulation that pressures your boundaries. You can use these words carefully without turning them into weapons. Because the chosen don't weaponize language, they illuminate with it. Now, the convergence is here. You've been refined so you can act cleanly, not impulsively, not emotionally, not from a wound, from alignment. And the first aligned action is often painfully simple. Stop feeding what drains you. Stop feeding it attention. Stop feeding it explanations. Stop feeding it access. Stop feeding it your sleep. Stop feeding it your nervous system. And as you do, your life begins to reorganize. The right people find you. The right work clarifies. The right rhythm stabilizes. Not because the world becomes softer, because you become steadier. And that steadiness is your rise. Now the next movement is waiting. The one where everything becomes practical, where your days become a plan, where your plan becomes a path, and you finally start building the life that can hold your calling without breaking you. The plan becomes real when it meets people, when it meets conversation, when it meets conflict, when it meets the moment you used to abandon yourself just to keep the peace. So now, the next action is relational, not fixing others, not preaching, not diagnosing anyone. Relational action means you change how you participate. In 2026, your rise will be measured by how you handle one thing: provocation, because the world will provoke. Online, at work, in family systems, even in spiritual spaces, not always intentionally. Sometimes because people are dysregulated. Sometimes because they're scared. Sometimes because they're addicted to reaction. So your practice becomes simple. Don't let your nervous system become public entertainment. You don't owe everyone a response. You don't owe everyone your energy. You don't owe everyone your story. It also helps to avoid framing any group as inherently evil or encouraging hate, since YouTube's hate speech policy prohibits content that incites hatred or violence against protected groups. Now bring it back to your life. Here's what relational action looks like in ordinary moments. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who only listen so they can find a loophole. You stop attending conversations that are designed to exhaust you. You stop answering why, when why is being used as a trap to pull you back into debate. You learn the holy sentence, "I'm not available for this." You learn the second holy sentence, "I'll get back to you." You learn the third holy sentence, "No." Not angry, not dramatic, just clear. And this is where many chosen ones feel guilty. Because guilt used to be your leash, the trauma bond to responsibility. But guilt is not guidance. Guilt is a signal that your nervous system is learning a new reality. So when guilt rises, you don't obey it. You observe it. You say, "This is old programming." And then you choose again. This is how the plan becomes embodied. Now, another practical step. One that changes everything quietly. Choose 3 people. Only 3. Not a crowd. 3 people you can be real with. Not perfect with, real with. One could be a friend. One could be a mentor. One could be a professional support. Because isolation makes patterns louder. Connection makes them easier to regulate. You were never meant to carry the whole path alone. And when you choose those 3 wisely, you stop needing strangers to validate your knowing. You stop needing the internet to tell you who you are. You become less programmable. Now, the next step is practical service. Clean service. You choose one offering, one output, one lane, not because you're limiting your gift, because you're focusing your beam, a weekly message, a daily practice, a quiet project, a consistent craft, and you do it without needing applause, without needing it to go viral, without needing it to prove anything. Because your goal in 2026 is not attention, it's impact that doesn't cost your soul. Now feel the convergence. Your boundaries protect your energy. Your energy supports your consistency. Your consistency builds trust with yourself. Trust with yourself builds clarity. Clarity reveals the right relationships. The right relationships support the mission. This is the rise. Not mystical, not theatrical, real. And as you begin to live it, you'll notice the next shift arriving. The moment when action stops being a concept and starts becoming a lifestyle. And that's where the next movement waits. Quietly, like sunrise, inevitable, just beyond your last excuse. And you can feel it. That line in the sand, that quiet moment where you stop negotiating with your own future. Because 2026 is not asking for a performance, it's asking for a choice. A clean choice. A steady choice. The kind of choice you repeat even when your emotions fluctuate. This is your last spiritual warning, and it is also your greatest permission. Do not wait for everything to feel safe before you rise. Safety is not the absence of challenge. Safety is the presence of self-trust, and self-trust is built now. In ordinary moments, in the small decisions that protect your peace. So if you've been waiting for the perfect sign, here it is. You are tired of repeating the same lesson. That tiredness is not failure. It's readiness. You are ready to stop calling it just how life is. Ready to stop calling it bad timing. Ready to stop calling it maybe later. And you don't need to announce it. You just need to move differently. One boundary, one rhythm, one focused lane, one honest choice, then another. Now, before the closing word is spoken, remember this. Spiritual language is meant to illuminate, not to imprison. So take what serves you, leave what doesn't. If terms like monitoring spirits help you name the feeling of being watched, use them as metaphor. If words like trauma bond help you name the pullback into old roles, use them as clarity. If scapegoat helps you see why you've carried blame that wasn't yours, let that truth set you free. And if none of those words serve you, release them. You are not here to memorize labels. You are here to become whole. Because wholeness is the real anointing. Now the final invitation comes softly. If you have been using giving to avoid being alone, you can stop. If you have been using busyness to avoid feeling grief, you can slow down. If you have been using spiritual ideas to avoid practical change, you can choose one step today. 1. Not to prove, to begin. And this is where the key word becomes more than a word. It becomes a direction. Rise. Rise above false urgency. Rise above guilt-based love. Rise above the need to be chosen again. Rise into the life that fits your spirit. The life that holds your peace. The life that honors your sensitivity as sacred and skilled. Now, if this spoke to you, if something inside you recognized itself, don't let it fade into someday. Type the word rise, and let that be your first step, not for the algorithm, for your own soul. Because you are not behind, you are early, and you are needed in a way that does not destroy you,